The HyperDrive. The HyperDrive. Depending on one move list. You got one set of moves. Think about it like this. One set of moves. The hypermasculine, hyperfeminine. Hyperfeminine, hypermasculine. Join me on TikTok. I dropped the video talking about living in, existing in the hype. It's 8-part. You know, we do the Sitting in the Shadow series. Join me on TikTok. And this video will be on YouTube after we're done. But I wanted to get into the HyperDrive. Divine Rise. Blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. Remember, healing is destructive. Healing is destructive. You are deserving, but you are not entitled. And the level of honesty is going to take for you to face yourself is going to challenge that perception and help you get into your perspective. The reason, I had to start, somehow I was like, this is part of my thing. Now you're looking at yourself, a lot of the things that I got, we get scared of. The fear complex, the fear of our receptiveness, the fear to submit, the fear to really become vulnerable with ourselves. The best way that I could like break it down, I was thinking about it on my run, was that hyper masculine or the hyper feminine or the hyper extension, or to stay in this sense with yourself because of the traumatic experience. You need constant recognition. We need this constant recognition. When you think about hyper extending something, you know, once something is like, if my arm is hyper extended, I need support or something to recognize it, what it is, in order for me to bring it back into balance until it resets itself. This is the hyper feminine and the hyper masculine. That's the independent or the real nigga, or the title or the title that you cling into. It's depending on this one drive that's actually an auxiliary drive. It's an auxiliary drive, but you're dependent upon this one move. You got one move and multiple sequences in that one move. You got one move, and it's based on when you think about that one move, what makes somebody a certain value, what makes somebody a certain aspect. It's one move. You got one move. And you can tell you only got one move because you only understand one emotional sequence. Remember, we're going into this emotional intelligence is the root. Some of you have, I'll put it like this. We don't use the chakras as an example. Some of you are still in the drive that is your root chakra. And you use your root chakra, the survival, the grounding, the basis, since you're stuck within that space of grounding. So it's like, remember, it's either balanced, overstimulated, understimulated, or balanced. Overstimulated, understimulated, or balanced. Once you understand that two sides of the same coin, that balance is in that center, you either overstimulated or you understimulated. So you're always going to be seeking stimulation. Either way, whether you're understimulated in your grounding, your house, where you live, all of these aspects, how you make money, everything that you're doing, whether you understimulated or overstimulated, you're always going to be looking for stimulation. Always. Think about that aspect. Think about traumatic experience that go on inside of, when you think about a traumatic experience that's happened inside of your life. I broke it down. We've broken it down many times before. If you are 11 years old, something happened to you when you were 11 years old. If you have not dealt with what happened to you at 11 years old, whether it's your mother left, your father left. I talked about this earlier, so it's so easy to roll it off. Your mother left, your father left. There was a indiscrepancy, sexual trauma, whatever. You You didn't get that nurturing or protection in that space until you face that point where you did not get that to come into that balance, that emotional understanding. All you're going to be sitting here doing the entire time, under stimulation or overly stimulated, you're going to be looking for you're going to be looking for the stimulation or the compliances for that trauma to exist. You need it to happen. You need what's happening inside that space to keep happening. Every time that you wake up, I always talk about this. What do you do when you wake up? The mentality that you have when you wake up sets the tone for everything that you do. So my mentality is if I feel like I need to be stimulated to be woken up, that means I keep telling myself that me waking up isn't good enough. Just me waking up isn't good enough. I need more. But you got to think about where you learned that from. That's a trauma response from how you were taught when you woke up. For some of us, when we think about how we woke up, in some households, you were woken up to go to school. You were woken up on the weekend to church music. You were woken up to church music. You were woken up to oldies or woken up to something. So that became your trigger point. That's how you wake up. That's how you learn how to operate inside your space. That's one move. That's one move. Around that one move, you created multiple sequences under that one move. Under that. So when that move list is played, I'm going to make one move. It has to be under this sequence of events. I only do it for this reason. I only do it at this occasion. But that's compartmentalization. That's keeping yourself stuck in the subject. That's the HyperDrive. In order for you to do anything, you need that HyperDrive. So now you're worried about how long it's going to take, when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen. And we talked about that, the videos on my TikTok. You get stuck in that reaction. I keep saying this. Reaction is comfort. Reaction is comfort. That's all reaction is. Reaction is comfort. Hold that in your mind. Reaction is simply comfort. If I can react to it, that means I can get angry. Whether I get angry, sad, upset, whatever it may be, as long as I can react, I don't have to assess because I'm in my comfort zone. I know my way around that space. Niggas is not shit. Women are not shit. If women did this and if men did this, I'm an alpha male. I'm an alpha female. All you're doing when you really sit with it and you do the background to it is like, you're just saying that you're trapped somewhere. Everything that comes into your space based on that is to challenge that very blockage. That to take you out of your comfort zone. Without discomfort, you do not grow. Conflict is a natural aspect of the discomfort. Without it, you do not grow. Without it, you have tax season. You got tax season, stimulus checks, Valentine's Day, Christmas. That's what you look forward to. And everything in between, you steady looking for stimulation in the physical sense. You depend on the external to give you your sense of purpose. You depend on these aspects to give you that sense of purpose. All because you are not going within inside of self. That fear of going inside of self, that fear of dealing with yourself. The fear, it isn't even, here's the thing. It's not the fear of the perception. We talked about this in the podcast. It's not the fear of the perception that you fear changing. People's perceptions of you, your perceptions of other people. That's not what you fear. It's the perspective. It's the investment into that perception is nothing but light on the wall. That perception is nothing but light on the wall. That perspective, that's looking into the mirror. That perspective is looking into the mirror. Looking at the identity that you create every time that you wake up. Like when you wake up and look into the mirror, what's the first thing you say to yourself? And are you saying it based on trying to convince yourself? Or are you owning it? How did you start the day? Did you start the day in gratitude? Were you grateful for the day? I am gratitude. Therefore, I am the opportunity. I am the resources. Because everything in your space is directed based on everything. Here's the thing. Being dependent on the physical, you'll wait for a physical change before the emotional or the mental change. So even if, let's go back to that thought, the aspect of when you were 11. When you were 11, 12, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, even when you was in the womb, whatever happened that triggered you into a certain space, that seized your emotional and your mental development. That seized your mental and emotional development. So you had to create a HyperDrive in order for you to grow physically. But since you had to act, since that trauma, that shadow, that point is a HyperDrive, that module that you had to put into your space, you have to depend on that in order to move forward. So the only way you end a relationship, exactly. So now every time that you go into a space with yourself, that module has to stay there. That thought, that action has to stay there for you to work. That action must stay there because you need that more than anything else. You need that because that now becomes the identity because you're not comfortable with your own perspective. So you got to become, once you become that authenticity, you don't need the identity anymore. You're not dependent upon how you look, when you look a certain way, how you act a certain way. You ain't worried about, I got to wear this, and I got to wear this to do this, this, and this. You use what the fuck is there. You come as you are. You come as you are. I made a video yesterday on TikTok before I shaved the Monday. I made one, I didn't shave. I didn't shave at all. I didn't shave, didn't line up. And I did it on purpose. And on Wednesday or Tuesday, I shaved, lined everything up. And I said, this is an example of don't pay attention to the messenger, look at the message. The message don't change. Regardless of where I'm at, I had to learn that the message is not going to change. That position is not going to change. I'm always in the right position. So it's not about the external changing. It's how I look at it. Are these conditions opportunities for me to move? Because now I give an example and how you move around your space. That fear of existence, that fear of existing, you becoming small. The space around you is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. All you're thinking about is the space is becoming too small. All you're thinking about is that space getting too small. When I look at a space becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, I look at it becoming more and more efficient. It's teaching me efficiency. It's teaching me efficiency. Because the more that I expand in my subconscious mind, in the subconscious, and I expand and I assess and I'm doing the work in here, naturally, any space that I use that was dependent upon the physical, in the physical sense, is naturally going to get smaller. As this expands, the shit around me gets smaller. The days start to repeat themselves. The days start to repeat themselves. I'm like, damn, my day to day, grand rising, my day keeps repeating itself. I seem to be stuck in this rut. But it has to become smaller so I can now look at it. It's not about the big aspect because all of that's multiple pixels. All of these pixels are put together either by me in a state of whatever it supports or recognize, whatever I'm recognizing at the moment. So if I'm stuck in a mindset of external before internal, then the problems are always going to look big. I'm never going to have enough because I'm mentally filtering, making everything else bigger than what it is. So I can't take it in. So I can't digest it. I can't apply to it. So I can stay within that narrative of I'm not good enough. That HyperDrive, that module can stay in play. It doesn't burn out. I can keep that light on that wall and say, see, that's why. It's that wall that's in my way. But right beside that wall, on that same wall, is the mirror that I do not want to look into. On that wall is the mirror that is not the mirror, that is the mirror that's going to show me exactly what I am, exactly where I'm at. That traumatic experience, it's since you're not wanting to look back into that mirror because that mirror is going to show what's behind you. What you're running away from. Since I don't want to deal with that. Dealing with that hurts too much. I got a couple good things inside the space. I've had a couple of relationships. I got some kids. I got a job. But you want more. Because all of that's condensed light. Your job's condensed light. It's only relevant to you based on how you learn how to get a job. Your relationship with money. Your relationship with your own emotions. The intimacy with my emotions and the relationship with myself, it changed my intimacy and how I understood the aspects of money. Because until I understood that aspect, when it was time for me to shift, I only could shift into something that was of the same reflection. Fear of that darkness. Fear of that space in between. Fear of that having to respond. Fear of accountability. Because my accountability is attached to abandonment. My accountability is attached to guilt. My accountability is attached to regret. My accountability is attached to an emotional wound. And I cannot expand my accountability because that means I got to go back to the root. I got to go back to the source. This is when we think about the hyper-masculine and hyper-feminine, or the hyper-femininized culture, the hyper-masculine culture, which is in reality, the hyper-masculine is only the aspect of building. That's whenever you look on your page and you see relationship goals or relationships goals or niggas debating. That's the masculine. The hyper-feminine aspect is in the darkness or in the shadow, which is the emotion that drives, the emotional driver, the module that drives it. They're hand in hand. So if somebody demonstrates that they are the divine feminine, butt ass nigga on the screen, they're in the masculine. They're showing it through the masculine complex. Because their emotions that they're pushing, their emotional cadence is pushing that to come through. So they need that relevance. That's why they post it based on relevance. They make it relevant. They got to stay relevant. They got to stay inside the trend. They got to stay breaking down things because they're afraid to break down themselves. They're looking at the aspect there's a lack of transparency because they can't really sit there and talk about themselves or break down aspects of themselves in the simplest reason. There always has to be some type of pageantry with it. It can't be raw. It can be real. It can be real or whatever the perception of real is. This is why we stuck where we at, brother. This is why we stuck where we at, sister. Because the motherfuckers are against us. The they, the them, the who. But when you really start looking at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm the they, I'm the them, I'm the who. I said I am that I am. Therefore, I must be the they, the them, the who. I must be the when, the what, the where. When did I get lost? On finding out when I did this, where I was, who I am, I'm the they. So the longer that I stay within that position, that hyper module stays in play, everything outside of me keeps repeating itself. Think about this. It takes half of a second. It takes half a second for your mind, for your brain to respond to something. In between you reacting to something, and your brain getting the signal to tell you to react to something, there's a half of a second in between, 0.5 of a second in between that. That's of a healthy brain. What we would call a healthy brain. That means a healthy brain fires off and can have the normal receptors are in play. It can react and move in that sense. That means that means the response is always fluid. Always fluid. That's the downloads. But if you have emotional trauma, you have the emotional trauma, you have the physical trauma, you have all of these aspects of these traumas going on, then think about it. When your mind's firing off the signal, what is it bouncing off of? What is it bouncing off of? Every time you find yourself in a situation, what is it bouncing off of? Off of that wall. It has to bounce off that light. It must bounce off that wall and deliver what you need to react to. I've talked about this before when we talk about those aspects of those agreements and those arguments. That internal argument, if you have not dealt with your internal arguments, you make agreements, you're looking for the agreements based on those internal arguments with yourself. What do you think you're going to keep doing? Every time you do not get what you say that you want, how do you learn how to respond to it in the first place? Based off not getting what you felt that you needed at a point in time. How would you respond? How did you used to react? Ever since you were little to when you got older. Ever since that first moment that happened when you was 11 to the moment to now. How have you always reacted? It has nothing to do. 9 times out of 10, when I really started sitting with it, I realized that half of the reasons that I was reacting or saying things, or it didn't have nothing to do with the person. It had nothing to do with the space. It was bouncing off a reaction of the buildup. I needed something to react to. This is why I talk about that when we do this underlining process. It says that when we start building this process and get into that subconscious, you got to build a whole new, you got to build all new waves. You got to build all new points. You're literally rebuilding the entire mind, rewiring the entire mind. You can speed it up by psychedelics and acid, LSD, and all of these aspects. That's what that was doing. But that rewire is only based on the information that you have in there that's stored. So, once again, you can skip some steps, but you're going to have to come back. Every time you think, I'm going to skip the step and do this because I got this has everything this is what we do based on the hyper masculine and hyper feminine. One move. You got one move in pocket. I make money. One move. I got a plate. One move. That's still under the same move. Because none of that shit's transferable. See, that one move is not transferable. But it is transferable. You just ain't learn how to transfer it. I got bomb. Every nigga that leave me, they want to come back because they want to have sex with you. Nah, it's because I can cook, still sex. Because I can clean, that's still sex. You got one move that you have translated into multiple sequences under that one move, that one category that defines your identity. And you keep telling yourself, i.e., everything outside of you is that mirror point for you. You keep telling yourself that I'm only going to do this. Yep. You just hate the sequence. Man, because I gotta go back to this sequence. I gotta learn how to use these skills more. I'm not skilled as I thought. I've only because I kept getting recognition for this set of moves. That's what made me think that I was good. Only because I was stuck behind. So anything that's different, that new indoctrination, anything, now that I got to get rid of this, exactly when I said that thing about you hate the indoctrination. You hate what that indoctrination symbolizes. The only reason you hate it because it matches your move list. That's your move list in the variation. That's the basis to your move list. How you learn to operate to get the things that you needed into your life and the things into your cycle and keep the things going. That's your indoctrination. That's your moves list. You don't understand how you put that list together. Why you put it together. You understand it, but you don't want to get that to that point. Because when you start digging, you're like, damn, I created that out of survival. That means everything I've done is under this. This is my survival list. Is this survival list transferable? Yes, it is. You can take your basics and bring them into the higher aspects. Because that's what's done all the time. That's what you see in front of you when you got somebody that can cook very well, got mad skills in the kitchen, as an example. They got a YouTube channel sharing their recipes. They got a TikTok sharing their recipes. They got an Instagram. They got a Snap. They got stuff sharing their recipes, sharing their stories. But when you listen to that, they're telling the story while they're doing the cooking, keeping you emotionally engaged. The reason that you keep looking for recognition is because you're not owning that part of the story. I had to understand that the only reason I would seek recognition was for a sense of control. Because I used everything as a sense of control. Exposure versus vulnerability. So I use submission in its lower state as a sense of control. But until I learn to submit to myself and see where I lack control, to see where I lack discipline, that's what started, that HyperDrive didn't work. That HyperDrive, it wasn't working anymore. The way that I would use that HyperDrive, be like, yeah, I'm going to keep, yeah. Shorty gonna come through on my leg. This off on. Okay, cool. That's nice. You must be gay. You don't like pussy? You must ain't never had no real nigga in your life. You scared of dick? That's the thing you keep telling yourself in that hyper masculine state. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Exact. We sitting here this entire time. You mad because you now have to go internal. Remember that standard? We talk about this all the time. That standard, your stability, your structure, your integrities, your humility, your potential and your purpose are only found inside of your darkness. So you can run around all day calling yourself something. I'm royalty. We royalty out. Yeah, you got royalty in your blood. Yeah, you got that there. But until you internalize that process, You can't unlock that aspect. That's why every year they can give you a different movie of something that you've already internalized. You are a slave to your emotions. I.e., you're a slave to your damn emotions. I.e., every year I give you a different slave movie. You still think, you still have you still need the external variation of Saturn being the planet of restriction. So you still need something to be satanic. You still need that outside of yourself so you don't go too far. Because that's the reflection of you not going too... Remember, that's the outside of you. That's the mirror. You need that wall present and light on that wall so you don't go too far. So you don't speak up to a certain level with yourself. So you keep it, I'm going to keep it over here. No. You got to go in with it. But if I say this, then what's going to happen about what do you mean? If I can't say all of this. That's why sometimes you see motherfuckers like you'll spend 90% of your day looking for something to stimulate you externally as a reason why you don't do it. A reason to keep you locked within that cycle with yourself. Or there's a reason I don't do this. There's a reason I don't see it this way. Because to see it that way, I got to go back and accept some other shit. It go deeper inside of myself. That hyperdrive. Staying in that hyper complex. I need to stay in the hyper complex because that's all I've ever known. This is all I've ever done. This is all I've ever known. I'm doing what I want. To keep doing what I want when you're really only doing what you can. Remember, it takes a lot more discipline in self and in internalized processes to do truly what you want. And it takes less to do what you can. Now, here's the two sides of that same coin. In doing what you can or doing what you want, there will be the same consequences. The same consequences, the same obstacle or opportunity, but based on doing what you want in the internal process of disciplines with yourself, you'll accept that consequence faster than the other side. You respond to the consequence. As the space gets smaller and you can't be there anymore, you already have a plan in play that you knew you weren't going to stay there. You knew it was time to move forward. As opposed to the external aptitude, you mad at your job, you mad at Facebook, you mad because they blocking you and all this other shit, but it's because you ain't got no plan. You got a pattern, you ain't got no plan. I ain't been blocked on this app yet. I had one restriction on this app. One time. And that was because I posted in a conscious group. And what I posted, they reported, and then that was the only time it got restricted. Only time. It taught me, don't go in that group no more. But if you have a plan in play, Yep. If you looked at yourself right now and you took the cost, you costed yourself out right now. I remember I actually did a costing index sheet for myself, of myself. And I remember I looked back at it and I was like, My old self, my old versions of myself required so many external accessories to exist. I needed so much shit to exist. But when it came to me in the aspect of living in the authenticity of my purpose, coming into that darkness with myself and grooming myself, I realized that I didn't need none of that shit. So it allowed me to let it go. I desire you to be the best. I desire you to be the best. Because I desire myself to become the best. To continue becoming. I desire you to tap into your becoming. But you gotta remember, this healing shit is destructive. You are desiring or deserving of all that you desire. But that entitlement will keep you on the external. Will keep you separated from you, where it's really at. It don't matter when you start. All that matters is that you put in this work. Exactly. I salt this shit. I'm what the fuck? I am the fuck. I'm not here. What? Everything from the consultations, any services, you got questions, hit me up in the inbox and let's start a dialogue. God Hour Podcast is out now. Results may vary. Progressive perspective. Streaming on 8 platforms. Go tap into that. Join me on TikTok for the daily hits that I do. The rough drafts. I call them the rough drafts. They're the rough drafts. If you go back, if you listening to this and you go look on TikTok and look at the videos and you see the connections, you understand that that's the rough draft, because that's when I first get up. Everything that you apply to has the same presence. It doesn't matter once you understand that process, you understand your purpose and your potential. I love you. We love us. I